Here's your paper.
Yeah.
And so the European Union is an entity that has faced a lot of Europhile feelings, almost as much as Europhobe ones. 10 years ago, a series of crises, refugee crisis, Euroscepticism, migration, and so on made big change in the integration dimension. Yeah, I guess yeah, a lot has been going on. I mean, a lot of changes have happened since 2008 when the sovereign debt crisis began. The Treaty of Lisbon was being negotiated still after the Constitution Treaty draft Constitution Treaty was not approved, and so and then of course there was been my point I'm trying to make is since 2008 to 2009, say to the present, the European Union has gone through a tremendous amount of change. I mean, a pace of change that's the fastest. Sure, it's got to be the deepest and fastest change that we've ever seen. I mean, aside from the negative aspects like Brexit, I mean, since the financial crisis happened, the European Union has established the euro, and the European Central Bank has solid, real currencies. They've passed a number of major changes in the way the European Union functions. But one of the things you notice in terms of how they've done that, they have not done it through the old process of adopting treaties, through the traditional process of meeting, everybody coming together in an intergovernmental, it's called an intergovernmental conference, and then they bargain and negotiate, and they come up with that draft treaty, and then the heads of state and government and the European Council meet, and then they approve it, and then the member states each have to go through their own respective processes for approving the treaty, which typically always requires a referendum by Ireland, and then Italy never has a referendum, Germany never has a referendum, but the French sometimes have to have a referendum. It's a really foundational treaty, but ever since the Lisbon Treaty, they had to revise that, I think, 3 times before the Irish would approve it. And so, and this is happening in 2008, 2009, when the world economic crisis is becoming evident.
The Irish or the England?
Well, England left in 2016, 6 years later, and they had a referendum. But the point is that it's a good point, because the other members of the European Union, since that experience with the Brexit and the draft Constitution Treaty for the French in 2005, and the fact that I think they had to come up with 3 versions of the Lisbon Treaty before the Irish would finally approve it. No more referendums. I mean, the British had one to leave, but despite the big development of the European Union, and that's just the beginning of the development. There was something, this conference I was telling the students about, there was also a presentation by an economist on Zoom about the next generation program that was adopted in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and the issuing of Eurobonds, which is a first. And all of these new powers and authorities that the European Union has adopted, they've all been negotiated by the heads of government and meeting together and agreeing to these new treaties. And then to some extent, like for example, the next generation funding, that did require all of the member states to agree on funding the money to come up with the 750 billion euros that is being spent. But there were no referendums. There's not a French vote, popular vote, or an Irish vote. It was all done by the governments and the legislatures. And so when if you study the European Union, you learn about how they typically, when they meet to create the Treaty of Rome, and the Treaty of Rome is negotiated through what's called an IGC, an intergovernmental conference. And the intergovernmental conference lasts for some weeks or months, and they come with a draft treaty. And then heads of government state approve the treaty. And then each of the member states goes through the process they have to go through to approve that treaty. And for Ireland, there's always a referendum. And France sometimes has a referendum for important issues. The Italian constitution does not require a referendum. The German constitution does not require a referendum. They don't do that anymore. That's what I'm trying to say. And all since 2008 and the major crises that the European Union has been facing. And of course, you know, at the same time, you could say that there was supposed setbacks with the Brexit vote and the departure, which, you know, it was difficult for people to really believe that was going to happen until it happened in January, right before the start of the pandemic in January 2020. And then the pandemic hit, and that was a global crisis. And then the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Yeah. And okay, well, why am I going through all this? I guess that's always been a point that the European Union, if you read and I think it might even be mentioned in the book, that the European Union develops through responding to crises. And how do you define a crisis? It's an unexpected threat, intense threat with limited time to important objectives. You don't have the time, you don't have complete information, but you have to do something. And, you know, who predicted the pandemic? Who predicted well, I don't know, like I told you about the Greek debt crisis. I told you, I remember reading in the Financial Times that people were saying, you know, these Greeks, I mean, we don't know if these statistics are really questionable. And that's like a point I made in the European politics class today. Everybody sort of knew that there was something wrong with the Greek numbers. But there wasn't a crisis. And like I said, policymakers, they respond to crises. There's a political crisis that threatens them, their interests, including their jobs, their well-being of their nations. And that's when a problem gets addressed. The Greek issue wasn't a crisis. When everybody was reporting, you know, how did they pay for all these Olympic facilities in 2004? Well, you know, nobody seems to be too upset about it until finally somebody in the financial community said, wow, you know, these numbers about Greece, I don't know if they're really going to pay this back. Yeah. Boom, boom. And then it becomes a crisis that has to be addressed. Only until somebody put it in the decision makers, the policy leaders' face that this is a threat. This is a big problem for you. And so that's how the European Union sort of responds. And I guess I'm saying, European Union, but then I keep thinking, like I talked about in class today, the European Union is supposed to be a peace strategy to prevent another world war after 2 world wars. And yet we've got horrors reminiscent of World War II now happening right now in the same place they happened in World War II. I mean, World War II was won and lost in Ukraine by German and Soviet armies. Yeah. And it's happening again. And, you know, what blame or what responsibility or what I don't know, blame, but how much do we attribute the European Union to helping that, encouraging that unintentionally, or maybe the European Union has kept it from getting worse? That's hard to believe. Like I keep mentioning, you know, we talk about the European Union. The European Union never gets enough credit for its successes because it prevents bad things from happening. So if something doesn't happen, we don't go, yay, it didn't happen. There's no civil war in Latvia and Estonia between the Russian minority and the Latvian majority or the Estonian majority. Yay, European Union. Only when, and like I said, things can always be worse than they are. But it just seems to me like we saw this coming 8 years ago when, you know, I got here in 2009, and it was in 2013 that the Ukrainian government the Ukrainian politicians were promising running for office, including this person, right? If I go, because I've shown them to other students. Viktor Yanukovych. He was the 4th president of Ukraine, and he, make sure it comes up. He was elected in a free and fair election, it says in 2000 and, what was it, 2012 or 2010? He was elected president in 2010, and what everybody says was a free election. It was a fair election, and his base of support was here in this part, the Donbass region. That he was considered, this area is considered more sympathetic to Russia than this part here. And this is where Ukrainian nationalism is concentrated. And when he was running for president, he had earlier been president, but then was removed because of claims of corruption in the election in 2004, and then was removed, and then he ran again, and he won. And he promised when he was running for president that yes, he would lead Ukraine to some kind of agreement with the European Union and try to, move, Ukraine towards becoming part of the European area, and he said he was going to do that, and was going to do that, and then, the leaders of the European Union invited him to come to Brussels to sign what was going to be a trade association agreement, and then Putin, who is also president of Russia, he was putting pressure on Ukraine because this economy in this area in particular is interconnected with the economy of Russia and the rest of the former Soviet Union, in terms of pipelines, in terms of supplies for factories that they need parts to finish their products here, from the Soviet times. And Putin started pressuring Yanukovych and embargoing the Ukraine, and people were losing their jobs because Russia under Putin was not providing the products that they were supposed to provide, in terms of trade. And so Yanukovych, under all of this conflicting pressure, he then goes to Brussels in November 2013 and says, I can't sign the association agreement. And the limited research I've read was he was tremendously pressured, but both sides. I mean, he tried to do what he could, but he was pressured, and then he decided he couldn't sign the association agreement when he was put under all this pressure from him, and that's when the protests started among in Kiev. That was on the square, the public square called the Maidan, and they call those protests the Euromaidan because they're predominantly students protesting against Yanukovych, and Yanukovych had violated his promises that he was going to integrate Ukraine economically with the European Union. And we still don't know what happened, but and then of course I told you what did happen, and I remember, which people strangely don't seem to want to mention, or they claim it's not important. High-profile European Union and American political figures in the government went to the Maidan protests, and physically went to Kiev because they're, it's a democratic government. You can go there, right? Democratic society, including the first president of the European Council under the Lisbon Treaty. That was Herman van Rompuy. He went there. Victoria Nuland, the Assistant Secretary of State in the Obama administration, she went there. And John McCain, the senator who ran against Barack Obama for president in 2008, he went there, and they were encouraging the protest. Yay! I mean, Victoria Nuland and I think Herman van Rompuy, they're actually giving food, distributing food to the protesters. Yes. And then we don't know what happened, but then the police fired on the protesters when they were going on for days and then weeks, and the downtown area was barricaded, and they killed up to 100 people. And then Yanukovych, he resigned and fled. So from Putin's point of view, I mean, you had a democratically elected president who made a choice reflecting all these conflicting pressures, and the Americans and the Europeans didn't just try to persuade Yanukovych to go. They actually went there in high profile and encouraged the protesters to resist the government's policy that was adopted. Now you can say, well, there's no rule against protesting, but when Herman van Rompuy goes there, I mean, and Putin, in response, after Yanukovych fled and they moved forward to sign the association agreement, that's when he encouraged these people to rise up and took the Crimea, and that started the war that lasted for 8 years to kill 14,000 people, caused 1 million refugees, that escalated finally. And I don't know what the connection is. Like we can always say, what if Donald Trump had been reelected? Would Putin have invaded Ukraine? Because the view was that Donald Trump was sympathetic to Putin in Russia. And that, well, I don't know. I do know that after Biden got elected, he brought back Victoria Nuland back into the administration. She's again, and it was, of course, she started escalating. The conflict began to escalate until they openly invaded in the end of 2 months ago. So this is, the European Union is great, but are we supposed to be overwhelmingly happy about that?
About
The European Union. I mean, given what this, I mean, we have atrocities, the same kind of stuff we saw there 70 years ago is now happening again. And, how much blame or responsibility the European Union gets. But why Herman van Rompuy? Why did he have to do that? Why did they, you can make an argument, well, they were concerned that if he had stayed in office, he wasn't going to leave. He was going to do like what Alexander Lukashenko did in Belarus. We don't know that. He was the first president, and he went of the new European Council, first president of the European Council. Let me see if you go, shall we? Does it say him, show him, describe him, go there? No, they're not talking about. I remember he went. Yeah, they don't happen to mention this. Why don't you mention it? And he was replaced by Donald Tusk, and now he was replaced by this man, Charlie. He's now the third president of the European Council.
It was Prime Minister in Belgium.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, they don't, he doesn't talk about, why don't you talk? Why doesn't anybody want to highlight this? Are they embarrassed? Are they regretful? What about Victoria Nuland? She went there. She was recorded by the Russians encouraging the European, condemning the European Union for being too willing to negotiate with the Russians. So she was in and now she's back in the Biden administration. Yeah, United States, and John McCain, see what is she? Yeah. And so this is what the Ukrainians call their Euromaidan, the revolution of dignity. That's the term that they use. Protesters fighting government forces on Maidan in Kiev in 2014. And when did the shooting happen? Well, anyway, so let's go back to your paper here. So, so of course, one of my tasks, I think, is to help you polish your scholarly English to make it even more great than it already is. So like I said, typically we don't use I, me, my, first person. We don't need to do that. And so I guess I should ask you, maybe this is the best way to do it. Oh yeah, and in terms of when I make suggestions, in terms of how I might, as a native speaker, suggest how you might want to rephrase it. Somebody once told me that the best way to help people polish their English is not to tell them how I would write it, because you don't learn much if I just say, well, I think it should be like this. Rather make some suggestions and let you choose. So that's why I often put like two options down. Either one's okay, but I want you to choose one, or choose whatever, however you want to do it. So, and you find also when you get rid of that, as I mentioned, that first person, you cut down the words. The European Commission showed how flawed might be the European Union as an institution. So again, you want to keep sentences as short as possible. So I suggest you break this up. A counterargument can occur to reduce or decrease. Which do you prefer?
I think reduce.
Okay, so I'll let you go ahead and clean that up. I'll send this back again to you here. And to reduce the bitterness of the statement, the crisis was more due to the feeling of a man for the European Commission being an obstacle to France. De Gaulle forgot what smaller member states had agreed to when they signed for integrating you know, I mean, De Gaulle was interesting, right? Insofar as, for example, I mentioned in class about how the European Union under Emmanuel Macron in France, that he criticized the European Union and NATO under Trump for appearing to, you know, push Russia towards China, and how that could be prevented. You know, De Gaulle, the French. The point I'm trying to make is that Moscow sees the European Union as some kind of an extension or instrument of NATO, and that means the United States. And that if and is that how could they have promoted complexity in perception prevailing in Moscow towards the European Union? And when De Gaulle was president, De Gaulle was all about French pride and French. And he was sensitive to French sovereignty, but he was also sensitive to British and American domination. Even though, you know, France didn't threaten the United States, they made a big show of how they were independent. So De Gaulle took France out of NATO in 1966. He kicked out all the American soldiers, closed all the American military bases in France, had been there since World War II, and withdrew France from the military structure of NATO. Now, and De Gaulle, you know, developed France's nuclear capabilities, no nuclear force. He made lots of statements that, you know, even they were just statements, they were still made publicly about the Anglo-Saxons and the British being too close to the Americans. And, you know, he didn't want Britain to join the European Economic Community. He vetoed it 2 or 3 times. It was only approved after he stepped down in '69, and then he died in '70. And he, but then after the Cold War ended, France, there were French leaders. I remember doing research and finding, you know, comments by people, Francois Mitterrand, that these Americans, they're dangerous. There's a problem. They're too assertive. They're going to, but nevertheless, France reapplied to re-enter NATO, and they re-entered NATO's military structure. I think in 2009 it was finally completed. And I guess someone can always wonder, if France had stayed out of NATO, would it have helped contribute to a Russian view that European Union is not something that is controlled by the Americans, basically, that serves America? And you can say, what if? But the point is that they did apply to join after Mitterrand was gone, after De Gaulle was long gone, and they rejoined NATO in 2009. And anyway, so the I mean, because I guess I'm wondering this, because if somebody's going to do an analysis like me or somebody else about how did we get to this point, and why did Russia intervene in Ukraine when Ukraine was simply going to sign an association agreement with the European Union, not NATO, the European Union. Now, in 2008, the NATO did say that Ukraine could apply to join. They didn't say they'd accept their application, and it was clear they weren't ready, but they did say that they were open to Georgia and Ukraine joining. But they didn't join, and it was after, you know, Putin did not want Ukraine to join the European Union. He wanted Ukraine to be within the Russian sphere of influence. We talked about a Eurasian Union. We talked about trying to create a Eurasian counterpart. And Yanukovych was under these conflicting pressures, and maybe they weren't irreconcilable. But you did have, again, Victoria Nuland, Herman van Rompuy, and John McCain going there to make sure that they stayed irreconcilable. Putting themselves there to encourage these protesters. And so now we have this situation, and you know, I already talked about it extensively in class. So So member states are key actors in the EU policy process, cooperation, federalization make it difficult for member states to find agreement and consensus on deep level institutionalization. Integration also underlies, or integration also hard. It's up to you to decide whichever one you want. Either one's, like I said, is okay. You know, I said, do not avoid using second person as well, because that's just convention. Do not use contractions. So, you know, lots of research here. And then so I cut out where you might want to, you know, consider cutting out in order to, you know, get under the word limit. So do you have any questions on the paper?
I overpass the
Surpassed?
limits. Yeah,
I think,
because
yeah.
I thought it was without the citation.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you go, if you go here, you can see the word count. And then you go here and you click include footnotes and endnotes. You include it and you see the numbers. Now, you know, of course, it includes my words as well there. But I think it, even without all of my comments, it was 700 words.
The citation, it's the quotation for me.
No, or I'm talking about the footnotes are not counted. What you put here is not counted.
Yeah, no, I was thinking that the citation were not counted as well.
Oh, no, those are counted. Yeah, that's why it should be not be more than 10% of it.
Okay, so I understand. Yeah, I will cut it. Because this one was harder than the other one because no, not harder, but I had to find I didn't want to just read 3 chapters and grab something and do it like quickly to get the point. So I read the 11th chapter once again.
Oh, you did?
And it was a lot of work. So yeah, but I'm happy that it's just a question of word limits, and that the content, I don't know, maybe is I could have done better, but European Union, I already have it in Belgium, and sometimes, yeah, as you said, sometimes I don't know how to think about them.
You studied in Belgium? What school?
In Université Saint-Louis.
So it was in French?
Yeah, but
So
I could have done it in English, but I don't know. I chose to stay in French because I love French. And I'm in political science, obviously I have to. I also have course of political regimes, political economic. And in Belgium, we have the choice between international relation or Europeanization when we do a master degree. And I will do both. Yeah. And a master in law.
So is the credit hours from this school going to transfer to your program in Belgium?
This course here? Yeah.
And so, I thought you were studying. I didn't realize you're studying now in Belgium. Yeah, you're not a student in Italy. You're a student in Belgium.
No. Yeah, in Belgium. I've never lived in Italy or in Sardinia.
No.
I went there a lot when I was younger because my dad had a house, because he lived in Sardinia, but I'm born in Belgium, and I live in Belgium since I'm born.
Oh, so I thought you were Italian for some reason.
I am, but just in the genes.
Oh, so you don't have a passport, an Italian passport?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, because of your parents.
Yeah, because my dad insisted.
Oh, that's great. And you have Belgian also? Yeah. Because
my mom also is born in Belgium, so I have both. I have double nationality.
Yeah. Are you gonna think about how many more years? How much more time do you have before you finish your program? Are you doing the bachelor's degree now? Or?
Yeah, I'm in my 3rd year of political science degree. Then I will begin my law bachelor degree.
Oh yeah.
And then I will do 2 master of 1 year in European politics and in international relation. And I will begin to work, and I will do it at the same time, but at night, a law master.
Yeah. So why did you choose to study in South Korea?
Because I am a woman, and if I want to go where I want to go
Uh-huh.
in the UN or the Commission.
Yeah.
I have to, unfortunately, I have to prove that I'm qualified.
Yeah.
I have to show him in my curriculum vitae
Uh-huh.
when other person
Uh-huh.
don't have to do that effort, but I know that I have to do.
Yeah.
So I will learn at least 3 languages.
Yeah.
And I will do at least one more
Uh-huh.
exchange.
Yeah. So let me just a second here. So the are you studying Korean language now too, right?
No, I don't have the the possibility because I have course in the classes in the morning, and all the Korean classes are in the morning. So they said to me that it was impossible for me to do that.
Yeah. So you're going to stay here for just one semester?
Yeah. And then I will come back. And next year I hope I will find an internship in the parliament in Belgium.
Yeah.
Because I'm sick of doing student jobs that have nothing to do with studying, cleaning and hospitals and yeah. So I will try to find that when you know when you know people, it's way easier than when you don't know anyone.
Well, that's pretty what people tell me too, right? That
Nepotism.
basically,
So
you know, that
in Belgium there is a lot of nepotism, and it's accepted, and I don't know why. Because there is a lot of, we see the same faces everywhere. Alexander De Croo is the son of Herman De Croo, and he was a mayor of Parken for 5 generations. 5 generations before him were also mayor. So,
wow.
You know, and Charles Michel was prime minister, and he was in the politics because his cousin or brother Louis Michel and his father was also in the politics, so now he's in the commission. Yeah. And I'm sure he will do, like, he has less degree than I will have. And I'm not sure I will go I will go up to this position, but I will push. Yeah. I will push until I go there. Yeah. Yeah, and that report that we had this morning about that I heard this morning about the Next Generation program, which again, you know, it's not covered in the book at all, and it's just so new and so important and significant that Italy and Greece have been most active in exploiting the resources that are available in that, and of course they have the biggest problems in borrowing because of their perceived less than stable financial situation. So they're the ones that have been the most exploitative of that. And yeah, and so like, and what did they say this morning also that was it 30%? No, 50%. 50% of the $750 billion has got to go to green development, green projects, alternative energy source projects, infrastructure projects, and another 27% has to go to digital. The internet digitalization of the infrastructure. Okay. So I mean, it's a big. So you know, in terms of South Korea is supposedly a leader in those 2 areas. So you know, I mean, you know, for example, the International Climate Change Panel on Climate Change that issues these reports, it's based here. Yeah. And you know, they're all into, you know, providing some kind of leadership on meeting globalization, particularly climate change issues. So you know, if you know, in the time that you have here to get to know what the European Union is doing in South Korea. I mean, South Korea was the European Union's first strategic partner. The first European partnership was with South Korea when that English woman was the first foreign affairs prime minister of the European Union. I can't remember the name. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you've checked out the commission delegation in Seoul here, or if you've been there, or you know, and you know, what is the relationship to the Belgian embassy? I wonder if they're next door. Probably not. I mean, it's just that, for example, some countries that you see on the internet, they have on their websites that their embassy to Belgium is the same one, is also their delegation to the European Union. So, but maybe, you know, you just
at least maybe check on the internet first and see what the European Commission delegation website to South Korea has in terms of also, finding out if there's any kind of resources that you might want to find. And, I'll typically also, when a number of the international students I've had, when they go back, they end up contacting me because they need a recommendation letter because they want to apply to like a master's program.
Yeah.
So of course that's not a problem, if we need to do something like that.
Okay.
So okay, so let's open the other paper as well. And
the other reason I came here, it's also because I don't know if I'm going to stay at the national level in politics or if I want to go to UN, because I already did a modeling of United Nations last year, and I succeeded with. I had an award and everything. And I felt really like I was in the right place at the right time, and it was hard. It was exhausting. I had to do a draft paper for months. Yeah. Because I had to assist in New York, but with the COVID, I couldn't go. Yeah. So I did it at distance, but it was okay. Because I'm happy for the class that does it like this year. They could go to New York. And so yeah, it's also because I want to prove to myself and in my curriculum vitae that I can go far enough and like live and emerge, not being entrenched in something, but to be at ease with the distance and other people, other culture and everything. So, because I think it's important when I was in ONUSIDA, it's the HIV section in the United Nations. I don't know how to say it.
World Health Organization?
It's UNED. UNED. So I was in that section for a month. And I submitted with my colleague our draft paper, and it was awarded. So I learned a lot about sub-Saharan African parts and India and also Tunisia, because I was representing Tunisia
in the UN simulation. Yeah.
So it was really interesting, and I think that maybe I will be more accepted in that organization than in the Nepotic one in Belgium. Yeah. I don't know, but I will push because I'm a competitive person. I don't know. I'm not afraid. Yeah. So I will try. Yeah.
Okay. So make sure, like, I don't know what I cut out here in terms of what, in terms of make sure you have use and say information for 3 different chapters. If you cut this out, make sure that there's information still from at least 3 different chapters from the book.
I have to submit it for the 5th of May.
Whatever I said on the, on the final exam statement that's posted there. Yeah.
That's not the one who is going to be graded with the V or.
No, that's just this one.
Okay, but
that's just the first draft. This is not a grade. It's just a
and the final will be
graded. Yeah, we'll get a letter grade.
But it's more
the final exam or the final paper.
The final paper.
Well, the final paper they'll get a letter grade. Yeah.
But when it is due.
Can check. From campus. We go to European politics assignments. Go to. And I have to make a site for it. So Saturday, May 7th. So a week from.
Okay, the final draft is just with the modification I made.
Yeah, the final draft. Yeah, after our talk here, and you revise it, and then you submit the final draft by Saturday, May 7th.
But do you think that I have to add something or just follow the exact?
Well, meeting that word limit requirement that doesn't include, of course, the citations are not included, the footnotes that's not included, but that's a challenge. It's meant to be a challenge because if I find that when I face a word limit, it really forces me to specify what exactly am I thinking, to refine and develop my thought, because I have to say exactly what I want to say in order to keep the whole article or paper under the word limit. So if you have to keep it like 525 words, whatever I said in terms of plus or minus 10%, that means you got to really know exactly what your argument is. You don't need to spend time, giving me a history of the European Union about it, in terms of whether or not you think the European Union is a force for peace, builds peace in Europe. I mean, because that's what it was all about. And I keep coming back to this. I mean, people that studied the European, like these people, I mean, there's this group of professors, these group of scholars all over Europe and the world that they really want the European Union to work. Yeah. So it's like I almost said a cult, but it's like a group of people that they are trying to study because they think this is the key, at the most advanced progress the world has made towards regional integration. And after the experience of the 2 world wars, and then this conflict happens in Ukraine, and of course the reaction of the world has been as much interesting to watch as it is as the events themselves are, because there's almost like a gloating. There's this gloating, is this like there's this cheerleading going on. I mean, this is and in conjunction with this gloating and cheerleading, there's this, from my point of view, stereotyping of the conflict, focusing on Putin being Sauron. Mm-hmm. And that's the whole part. Putin, it's Putin. And that's not strategically wise. Yeah. If you try a desired future you want to achieve, you have to look at factors at all 3 levels of causation. Mm-hmm. And to just explain, because if I just say, well, that's because Putin is a bloodthirsty tyrant, I don't have to do any thinking when I say that. Or the amount of thinking I have to do is then radically reduced. I don't have to focus enough on, I'm discouraged from focusing sufficiently on the internal political dynamics within the complexity of Russian politics. I'm discouraged from having to consider what role that the Americans might have played and why they played that role inadvertently, perhaps. And that's why I talked about the Cold War. Somehow there's this Cold War is an entire subtext to all of this in terms of fundamental disagreements or misunderstandings of what was going on from 1948 until 1991. And and I write about this. I mean, it's like also political scientists are at fault as well. I mean, like almost no political scientists predicted that the Cold War would end and the Soviet Union would just disappear. Mm-hmm. I mean, when I grew up, I was born in '62. So when I grew up during the Cold War, about all this concern about, oh my God, the communists are going to take over the world. Oh my God, they have all these nuclear weapons. Oh my God. And then Gorbachev comes to power in '85, and in 6 years, the Soviet Union's gone. Yeah. And the political scientists didn't predict this. They're like, oh, and then they just collectively, as a discipline, as a field, they just thought, so well, we were wrong. How could you be wrong? This is the biggest thing that we faced in the 20th century after the Second World War, and political science profession, for the most part, were caught almost completely by surprise by this. Yeah. And that tells you there was something fundamentally wrong about our understanding of the Cold War. If we didn't predict it, that means there was something wrong with our understanding of the Cold War.
I think also about the Soviet front. They had a hard understanding of that front of the Cold War.
Well, yeah, I mean, they would say, they would probably disagree. They would say in terms of this hard front, they'd say, well, containment worked. They say, and so, yeah, what they typically say is Gorbachev gave up because the internal conflicts within the Soviet Union were such that because the Americans successfully contained it, it had some setbacks, in Vietnam, but thanks to Ronald Reagan, and thanks to the Republicans, that the Americans mobilized the will and determination to do what was necessary to push the Soviet Union over the edge. And Gorbachev recognized that he couldn't win. He tried to make a new deal with America, and things got out of control. And he's still alive. He's still around. And then communism fell, and containment worked. Containment won and saved you and me and the whole world.
Yeah.
And Putin cannot accept that. That, you know, the greatness of Russia in the form of the Soviet Union is gone. And he is and I already talked about this in class, so, you know, I'm just going over again, but you know, we should talk about your other paper. So
just to be sure, the quotation are
no more than
not
10% of the whole text of the text of the body of the paper is 550 words, and you shouldn't have more than 55 words total that are.
Yeah, in quotation marks. Okay, but they are counted in the.
Well, sure.
Okay.
I mean, because, you know, that's the easy way to, you know, I mean, you learn more when you have to put things in your own words.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's what my teacher taught me when I was learning how to write for college. She said no more than 10% of any paper should be quoted text. She was tough too. She was difficult, but she was good. She was good. Okay, so I'll send it to you when we go. But let's look at the second paper now. And we go here, and yeah. So, you know, it was interesting. I mean, people wrote the paper as if they were producing the text of the brochure or website or whatever it is, and that's great. Some of the things that I didn't mention here that you might want to consider, for example, do you want to talk about COVID-19? You know, okay, since I told you not to use second person, I should use it. Does the paper want to consider explaining
in that essay,
social?
Is that really nonsense to use I? Because like in the assignment, it was written that we had to face the essay.
Oh yeah, well, this is a little bit different. You're right, because the way that people interpreted the assignment is that they're writing something as if you're giving a speech. Okay, I mean, I didn't really intend that. I intended it. I wanted people to tell me, explain what they're going to put in the paper. And but what people did is they wrote out what would be what they're going to put in the brochure or what they're going to put in the web page. And then what people did is they wrote out the paper or the web page, the brochure, the web page, and so what I want to have, and you can put the explanations in the footnotes, which are not counted towards the, you know, so I put this in because I think that social distancing, like, well, I mean, this has been a topic. Like, for example, Koreans are much more willing to follow government guidelines. And of course, the government will fine you. Like if you go outside and you're not wearing a mask, you can be fined. I think they're going to remove that rule pretty soon. But Americans, particularly if you're advising Americans, I don't know about Italians, I don't know about Belgians, but I know the Americans, they've got big problems with these social distancing rules. And it's been a topic that we're in the American politics class, right? I asked the students about, you know, given how, you know, the casualty rate, the death rate in the US show that the US political system is obsolete. And you know, but you know, if you're going to have these Americans come over here, they should understand there's certain expectations that they should confront the fact, understand that Korea is a communitarian culture. So the predisposition for Koreans is to do what they're told. And if they're not told to wear masks, they'll wear the masks. But there's still, for example, elements of this notion that if this is a conservative society, it's still a conservative society. So for example, you know, I guess if you cannot be out all night. The way, you know, if you come, I think you probably already know this, right? If the dormitory will lock its doors at midnight. And if you get back to the dormitory after midnight, they won't let you in because they're punishing you.
Midnight or 1?
I don't know what it is. One? Yeah. Oh, they changed it.
It's and 2 in period of exam.
It's what?
It's 2 in exam period. 2
Oh, but what about one during the regular year?
It's 1.
I thought it used to be 12 o'clock.
No, it's not the university. It is 12.
But you know, like, but they won't open the doors if you come after 1. And did they explain why?
But once I had a friend that came at 1.5, and they were screamed at by the by the guard.
I just got a sense because they're being basically, they don't you're not supposed to be out because they're supposed to make sure that you're not doing
Yeah.
stuff you shouldn't be doing, like partying too much.
Yeah.
And that's the way it used to be in the US until the 60s at universities.
Mhm.
You know, but that changed a long time ago. And it probably changed in Europe as well. And the and so yeah, I mean that's like useful information for Americans to know that, you know,
Yeah.
Koreans like to have a good time, but if you, I guess if you come back after time, you have to sleep, find someplace else to sleep,
Yeah.
which is funny. And basically just you know, but I mean, or for example, like also there's been a lot of talk during the pandemic about mental health that all over the world, that this has been really stressful for a lot of people, and people that were already vulnerable become more vulnerable. Um, and so there might be some kind of suggestion or some kind of evidence about where they can go if they want advice, if they want to they want to talk to somebody. And I know it's an issue because what was it when did I tell you this? I didn't mention it in class. There was a case of I had a student several years ago, you know, from a French university, and she had an Algerian last name, and she was my European policymaking class.
Yeah.
And I went jogging one morning, and there was a police car posted outside the residence hall entrance, and she died. And the university like never informed me. Like, by the way, your student, she's dead or she's gone. You just never. The students had to tell me, and then and the university never contacted me. And I asked the secretaries about it, and they heard something in the news. They were never informed by the university in the international studies department. And I still don't know. Like I heard different things. Like she either had some kind of heart defect that was never diagnosed, or that she drank too much and died from it, and or both. I don't know. And that's the response of the university. This is a big potential scandal. Just and I can understand, because I've been in places, worked at places where people talk too much.
Yeah, too much.
And they magnify it and they magnify it and they magnify it. So I can understand the perspective this university takes on all of these issues. Like, you know, you make it worse if you make people feel like you feed more information, because then they'll distort it and it'll get blown out of proportion. But then there was other cases too. Like, so that was a case with international students. And I had two international cases of two international students came here, one from the Philippines and one from Greece. The Filipino was a master's student, and they used to have a program whereby students would go get their master's degree on scholarship, but they had lived in the residence halls, and they were native English speakers from the Philippines, and they would help the students develop their English. And one of these students turned out to be a trans student, and he started wearing, or she started wearing, or they started wearing women's clothes, and they're living in the residence halls. And the Korean students, some of them told their parents, and their parents complained. And so the university had an issue. And the university, this was part of they had a formal agreement with the Filipino government to bring these students over. And so the university decided, in terms of balancing all these conflicting pressures from parents and students and the Filipino government and public, that the student could continue to stay at the university on scholarship, but could not live in the residence hall. And that wasn't good enough for the Filipino government. The Filipino government evidently was very unhappy, and they refused to cooperate for some period of time further with the university, because they thought that the university should not have done that, what they did to that person. Another time, there was an Australian student who was gay, and he approached some Korean guy, and the Korean guy didn't understand what was going on until he realized what was going on and told him, no, I'm not. You know, and the Greek student got angry and threatened him, and that became a scandal. And so that's what, like I said in class, it's something tied up with drugs, sex, and alcohol, are these issues regarding international students, which it can lead to an embarrassing scandal, if at least. So if you put in the brochure some kind of statement about where they can go, if worded politely, where they can go if they have any question about what is the right and wrong way to behave. Like, I mean, is there a counseling center? Is it the international office? Can you talk to somebody? Who's in the international office? Is it all Koreans? Or is there anybody there who's international? Like who's non-Korean?
Yeah.
I mean, but that appears to be, and I had a student, like I had a Chinese student who was mentally ill, and he was like stalking me because I failed him. I mean, it was, and it's just part of these issues that a lot of the international students, they come here and then they think that they're away from home and they want to experiment and they want to do things that they really wouldn't do back home because they think they can get away with it here. And then I still don't know how the university deals with it, basically, because like I said, the university really doesn't tell me much of it. But
wow.
So, and you have a case that I highlighted those two American students that killed that Italian woman policeman, in Rome. We talked about that in class today. You know about that, right?
No, I heard you talking about.
Yeah,
but I know about.
They were trying to buy cocaine, and which is illegal, of course. And then the deal didn't go bad, and they stole somebody's backpack and were going to return it in return for giving the money back. And it was two plainclothes, and they stabbed. They actually killed the policeman. And international students. And I used to see it in Bulgaria, because Bulgaria had a lot of international students because half the students were not Bulgarian. So they were all really high, ambitious achievers for the most part. So but they also drank and they do what students do. A lot of students do. But they did a pretty good job of staying out of trouble. We had one time, there was a crisis. One time a Russian got into a fight with a Muslim student, and that was unfortunate. And there was a couple of those cases, and then stupid stuff, like a student got drunk and fell off of a stairwell and died. Students are human beings, they're adults, so they're allowed to do what they want to do because you can't tell them, but it's I mean, you hear these stories, not just I remember talking to somebody who worked at the University of Pittsburgh, the students would do things they shouldn't do. They insisted on doing them, and they would one student got killed, and you used to wonder if you can tell them you shouldn't do this, and they do it anyway. And so is your roommate sick?
No, I was just thinking about that when you were talking about mentally ill. I don't know why when you asked me that question, I think I have mistook it with another day, but I wasn't even in your class. But this morning, I think you asked the question because my voice was really hard to hear and something, but I was just in my dorm. My roommate was speech like this.
Oh, is that why? Yeah.
Really, really tired. And I think that she has homesick because this has been 1 year.
Oh, is she from Belgium too?
No, she's from Brazil. And I think it's really hard for her. Yeah. And she's really sad because in Brazil there are some things that don't go well. So yeah, I don't know why I mistook it, but yeah, this morning. And sometimes when you're and the noise, my AirPod they died, so I had to put your voice on really tiny noise. So when sometimes I heard, but really far away, like Gloria, and I was like,
Okay.
That's why.
Okay, so let me go ahead and send you these two things again, and okay.
And apart from the remarks you gave me for the methodology paper, do I have to for the paper to be more than adequate? Do I have to do something in particular?
Well, for the research paper, for the research study, you say?
For the methodology paper, for the final draft.
Oh, for these papers?
Yeah, do I have something?
Yeah,
to
I mean,
do
you know,
more?
I mean, like I said, just keep under the word limits.
Yeah.
And make sure you're using study information from 3 different sources, 3 different chapters that we've covered so far. And
But so far they are adequate, or?
oh yeah, I mean, I give them a check. That's adequate. Yeah. Okay.
For the interview, do we have more information about the deadline?
Well, I mean, I wanted people by Wednesday to let me know, you know, if they've had if they've had success in finding people to interview. So I don't know, did you have success in finding somebody to interview?
Yeah.
Oh, you did? Oh, good. Who else? Did you find 2 people?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, well, that's good news. So, you know, I'm not supposed to know who they are because we have to, you know, act like, you know, this is a real, so it's supposed to be anonymous and, you know, and, you know, so, well, that's good. Okay.
But do we have a deadline for something to do about the interview, or?
I'll look into it. I'll give you some more information next class, I
Because
guess.
as I'm here with you, I just wanted to tell you that I won't be in South Korea from the 13th of May, 13, yeah, to the 26th.
Where are you going?
Vietnam.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I will foreign the classes, and I will give my homework if I have homework to do.
Yeah, the
obviously.
attendance is only through smart attendance, so, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, if you want me to be present or to give interview, in that moment, it will be by Zoom. It doesn't bother me.
It doesn't bother me, no.
Because I really wanted to go to Vietnam.
Yeah, great.
And it was the only thing that was cheap enough.
Yeah.
For me to, because from Belgium, it's 1,000 euro.
Yeah, other students have done that too. I mean, every year it seems students go to Vietnam.
Yeah.
Every semester.
Because I already went to Thailand 3 years ago, and I love Asia, so.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will let know the other professor or the other teacher, because I don't know if anyone will react that way. Some teachers are pretty like understanding of the situation, but some others.
Well, we were told to use smart attendance, so you don't have to be here to sign to use smart attendance. Yeah. That's what I was told. The whole university is using smart attendance.
No, I have one teacher who doesn't use it. I'm afraid of a reaction, but I will know. We'll see.
Okay.
It's okay.
Okay. Well, I'll see you next Wednesday. Well, Monday.
Monday.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have assignment for the next week?
We go back to the regular paragraph. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.